Hey, folks. Little check-in with you. I keep hearing from our illustrious MC that we have mostly designers in the room. So hands up if you're a designer. So you design something, right? Do you design your breakfast? Do you design products? Do you design services? What about researchers? Do we have researchers? Okay, fewer. Everybody who didn't raise their hand for that, do you not research? Okay, writers. Oh, there's some hands. This is great. Do the rest of you who don't raise your hands, are you writers? Do you not write? I'm hearing laughter, which means to me, you probably do write. You probably need your words to work in your designs. That's pretty important, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. Specifically, what UX content is, the impacts of that UX writing, and how we do some UX writing processes. Because we don't always do it systematically yet, and I think that we can be doing more design in our content around this whole industry. So, let's start with what UX content is. It lets people do what they're in the experience to do. And that can mean a lot of things. This cycle is a very plain version of what organizations need customers to do, right? They need customers to be attracted into the experience. They need them to convert. Maybe that's downloading an app. Maybe that is stepping onto a bus and literally onboarding into that experience. They need that person to be engaging in that experience, right? Using it for what it's there for. If things break, they need to support them, help them fix it, and hopefully transform those people using this experience into people who want to come back and use the next version of it, the next game that the studio releases, the next whatever. And maybe they want to bring their family along, or their friends, or their colleagues, or their industry. But customers aren't usually there to be attracted, right? They're there when they're investigating, they're verifying. They are not getting converted, they're making a commitment. Our language needs to be addressing our people where they are. Have you ever seen a personals ad? Okay, personals are really old. Have you ever seen a profile on a dating app that is really seeking to be like, I am super attractive. You are attracted to me. No, that's a big turnoff. So what we do is we create content to make all of these work. And these are just examples, right? There might be product pages. There might be tweets and posts. There might be articles about it. There might be advertisements to help make people aware and attract them in while they are already interested. That is a key portion of it. They also need maybe endorsements and reviews. Not all of this content needs to come from the company, but you need to make it available to people. And it just keeps going. You need the get started guides to get people onboarded successfully. You need the first run experiences. You need how-to content. And that how-to content builds their confidence to get in and stay in the game. That how-to content helps them keep engaging, keep building their confidence. They can do the next thing. They can do the advanced things. They can do the advanced PowerPoint presentation settings that I got cocky with yesterday. Now, they also need the alerts to be reminded to come back. And sometimes they need the error messages when things break, when they hit some edge in the experience. They need the troubleshooting instructions so that they can fix the problem. They need, sometimes, to bring them back around, you need to have things that make it sticky. You need to have those badges like, oh, I want to get all the badges. I want to get all the Pokemon still. You want to have the training and the conferences about your product that brings people back in. And holy mackerel, that is a lot of content. We are only talking about half of that. That is the user experience content. In a very broad sense, this is the content of doing. Okay? Now, raise your hands again. Do you think about all of those kinds of content as a designer? Yeah? Some hands? Nice. When we are designing experiences, our customers, we need to be aware that they are exposed to all of that, and it should work together as a system. It should work together in a system both of voice that is consistent and recognizable, and for usability, so that those key behaviors are really easy, even for beginners. So, let's talk about voice first. Voice has been defined in a lot of ways. One of the earliest ways was MailChimp did this great takedown. Raise your hand if you have a voice designed for your product. Oh, yeah, hands. I love it. But I noticed also the hands are pretty low this time, like, kind of. And this is very basic, right? This was one of the early ones, and using this but not strategy gives you this goal. It should be fun, confident, smart, and it gives you guardrails. Not bossy, not sloppy. Yeah? Very helpful. I was even less helpful on Xbox One. We knew we did not have enough writers for the breadth of new experiences coming into the console. So we took our voice principles of clean, casual, and keep them playing, because I was on the console side, and our whole job on the console is to keep people playing that next game, that next piece of music, that next movie. So I stole a bunch of good design, good poster design, and put these up around campus. And we had an increase in number of people emailing our alias, asking for help, asking for guidance, and people who knew the voice principle. That was not as easy to get people being as consistent as we wanted them to be. So when I went to OfferUp, I got a lot more prescriptive. I went from an organization of thousands of people to organization of not quite 200 people at the time, and they needed more, and there was just one of me. And I said, okay, how am I going to equip my developers so that when they're writing error messages, they can just get this done, and they can get it at least close. They can have the idea in their mind of what it should be doing. And we had these product principles of simple, trustworthy, personal, neighborly, and gratifying. And the product team and the marketing team had come up with these yes, this is what the product should be. And I had been at the company for 2 weeks, and they said, this is what the product should be. What does that mean about the words? And I said, well, there's 6 things I can change about the words. What we talk about, the concepts, the ideas, the words we choose to land those ideas consistently every time, that vocabulary, not all of the terminology, but just what is the vocabulary that lands those principles. The verbosity, how many words do we use? We also have the grammar, right? Like sentence structure, passive voice, active voice. We have punctuation and capitalization with a big asterisk, because not all languages have that ability. How are you going to capitalize Chinese? You're not. So, that's voice. The other side of this coin is usability. But they have to work together. We need both the voice to be consistent and recognizable and convey our brand and meet those product principles, and people need to be able to use it, right? And usability is pretty basic. We need things to be accessible. For content, that means that it's available in the languages that the people using it are proficient in, right? Basic accessibility. It also means that the reading level needs to be low. low enough that maybe a 12-year-old can read it easily, or sometimes a 9-year-old. It also means that every element in the experience has text for screen readers to speak. There's an awful lot more to accessibility, but in terms of the text, in terms of a broad generalization, that'll get you pretty far. It also needs to be purposeful. And by that I mean it needs to be clear to the person, how do I get to the thing that I want to do? Right? How do I meet my purpose as a person? Another bonus, it's not really a bonus, you need this too. Make sure that your organization's goals, the purpose that your company has for making this experience are clear. It's a deceptive pattern to do otherwise. Like, oh, I'm giving you just easy access to things so that I can send you a lot of ads and probably spam. Come on now, make that clear. We also want it to be concise. Now, concise doesn't always mean just short as possible, because short as possible doesn't always mean usable. It means, in some way, and for English, it means that buttons have 3 or fewer words, right? Make them very short so that people scan them easily. Make text blocks 40 to 50 characters wide. In English, I have not seen this validated for other languages. Make text blocks only 3 lines deep, because when it's longer than that for English-speaking audiences worldwide, they skip it. They just don't even glance at it. They don't even bother, like, oh, all the words I'm looking for are in this paragraph. They see block, they stop. Now, it also, in concision, means that the information that is presented to them is relevant to them right now. You can be very short. You can meet all of the other rules. And if it is not something they know they should care about, it won't work. It's not concise. I want to talk about conversational, not conversational like casual, like, hey, we're just having a conversation here. But I want to talk about conversation being the fundamental interaction of humans. You have a conversation with the experience, with a form. It's asking you for information, you are providing it. And almost everything humans do is that give and take with their environment. We need those words and phrases and ideas to be familiar to the people using it. We also need the directions to be presented in useful steps, in a useful order. Finally, we need it to be clear. Right? This is not news. We need actions to have unambiguous results. The how-to and policy information needs to be easy to find. We need error messages to help them go forward or make it clear when they can't and why they can't. And we need the same term to mean the same concept every time it's used. Okay, so that's just what UX content is. Let's go really quickly through this next part, the impacts, because right? Can't be much, it's just the words. In onboarding, we lose people at onboarding, right? We can change that in our Get Started guides, in our first run experiences, in our how-to articles. We can change the content there, A/B test it, and get it better. We can measure engagement, and we can change the titles, the buttons, all of those descriptions. We can change the game and experience content when it's not working, or when we think it could work better. We can A/B test it or use other methods, work with your data analyst to get it better. When we are completing that engagement, we should be able to measure completion. Did they not only get into a flow, but finish the flow? You know, how is it when they leave and haven't finished that yet? Do they get a reminder that they could come back and finish it? Very important. And then retention. Are we keeping them there? Are they coming back after errors? Like, this means instrumenting the cliffs in your experience, which is hard to make an argument to do, but critically important. We also can re-engage them with the badges, the profile ratings, and the invitations they can send to others that we enable with content that we've pre-written for them. Now, what's the impact that actually has? Well, let me tell you another story about OfferUp. So I'm not going to talk about any particular crime. I'm going to talk about our system of reporting crimes. So when something goes wrong for a person buying a product, so this is not even just a product, this is in person, people are using an app to say, I want to sell a thing. And another person is saying, I want to buy that thing. And then they go and they decide where to meet and they exchange the item. So OfferUp, LetGo, Craigslist, these things. When I worked at OfferUp, we had this problem. And we, every once in a while, somebody, and very, very rarely actually, somebody would show up at one of these things with malicious intent. Very bad. And we wanted them to report that to us so that we could work with law enforcement to say, hey, a bad thing happened, let me give you the data we have. And what we wanted them to do was use this reporting thing. Most of the time, people want to report, they missed our meeting, and I'm mad because they wasted my time. Sometimes they need to report incident at meetup. And this is where they need to go to report a crime. But what happens here is that all of this list is way too long. It's heavy. Almost every item starts with they. You're in a heightened emotional state. You were just robbed. And you need to find the right menu item? No, most people gave up. Even worse, when people needed to get to incident at meetup and say, I was hurt or they took my item, instead of getting there, they would choose some other item, and we would lose their report in other noise. So by making changes, and this looks very simple and very similar, because the only thing we could do with the software at that point was change the text. Only thing we could do. And so I changed the text. They had to choose trouble at meetup. They had more items to choose from there. But it gave us double-digit percentage increases in correct filing. It reduced our costs by a great degree, and it increased our ability to work with law enforcement rapidly. Okay, that was all a lot, and my time is running out. So let's talk about several UX writing processes in a row. Those of you who do work with a content designer or UX writer and you say, can you just quickly write the thing for me? Let's talk about what that looks like. Sometimes it might be information architecture, right? Sometimes it's how do all of these pieces of information, and in this case, it was the more than 170 settings in Xbox when we were going to Xbox One from Xbox 360, and they all needed to be in some logical sequence. And my PM at the time said, we can just make it alphabetical. No. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I was showing you that picture. But we got there, and we put all of those settings in logical places that tested really well. We also used design systems, these documented decisions to unlock the power, and they have to be made, right? Like the OfferUp voice chart. There's other ones, but you get the idea. So I've got that in my mind. And then I want to be able to iterate. So like any other design process, I need to work through the various constraints, the various purposes, the various goals, the user needs, the research that we bring in. And the word count actually usually gets longer as I get it more purposeful. And then I'm like, oh, I better get it more concise. And I get it way too far down. And I go, oh, it's very short now, but it's also unusable. I'll make it conversational, and I'll make it clear. And it usually evens out. But if I'm not following this arc and I'm giving you a quick, just give me a string for it, it'll be a shitty string. So I also use string patterns. And I have these in my head and so that I can just apply them. So things like, how might I write a title? Like, verb the noun. Nice call to action there. Maybe it's the button, which is just a verb, just 2 words. 1 word works even better, usually a verb. Maybe it's the description. I want to set expectations. I want to establish the band. I want to do all of those things. So I'm going to say things like, to do this, verb the noun. Verbing the noun helps you do X. I'm going to do transitions and confirmations using verb tense in English, and then notating that for my translators for languages that don't have verb tenses. I'm going to talk about notifications, where I need to inform or remind people to do the thing, And this is very similar to the others. This is using the same title pattern and description pattern frequently, usually shorter though. Sometimes there's errors that are really just detours. So my job is to get them back to the experience. So how do I do that? How do I help them meet their goal? I just say, do the thing again. This is just an alternate path. Sometimes there is no alternate path. And the original error here, the Among Us Auto 2526 forcibly disconnected because reliable packet without response. I was playing actually with my team in the early days of the pandemic, and we were playing online. I'm like, everybody hold up, I have a bad error message. And I can get back in, right? I knew I just needed to turn up, but I needed to screenshot it first. So what I'm going to do is help people meet their goal anyway if I possibly can, even if it's just turn it off and turn it back on again. So I've gone slightly over. It's glaring red at me. But we've talked about what is it, what kind of impact can it make. That was just one example. And all of the UX writing processes that you want to keep in mind, I want to keep in mind when I'm doing this job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Torrey.
Thank you.
So I've been backstage, and there's come in a lot of questions from the event app, and obviously people are wondering, how will large language models like ChatGPT affect UX writing?
How will they? Okay.
Tell us.
With my crystal ball, seeing into the future perfectly, with great clarity, because I asked ChatGPT. No. There's, honestly, the metaphor that I like to use is all about, I think Gerd mentioned it earlier too, this is about using power tools, right? Are you all ready to use ChatGPT right now? Yeah? For all of your strings. Just like that. What we need to do is develop a way to use this new power tool, these large language models, in a way that accelerates us instead of slowing us down. Because right now, it's super easy to get distracted by like, oh, what did I make it say this time?
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's just wrong. Oh, look, if we did this, this would be really bad. Yeah.
So you're not very worried. It's just a tool.
It's just a tool. And that kind of tool cannot replace the value that I bring and the value that other designers bring, which is the people, like figuring out what is the problem we're solving, how do we know that's the problem, what are the various ways we could solve that problem, and then deciding to use the tools.
And the way you described that, I was thinking, who's well situated to solve that? Well, UX designers, they understand what the problem is and who's using it. Do we need UX writers?
I don't know.
Couldn't just UX designers do it?
So raise your hand if you have, raise your hand high if you have that well-defined voice that you feel fully equipped to use. Oh, no hands this time?
What was that? I didn't quite understand the way you phrased it. The voice.
So do you know what principles you're trying to go after? Probably as designers, right? Do you know what concepts and words you use to land those concepts every time? Do you know the grammar that you want to intentionally use consistently and the tone that might vary across the app? Do you have a controlled terminology list that somebody is actively maintaining?
Okay, I think you made your point.
Hands.
Well done.
Thank you.
That was good.
Thank you. I mean, honestly, if you are writing for the UX and you don't have somebody else owning that, you are also a UX writer. You might want to work on those if you don't have them.
Could I show you a couple of examples?
Please do,
we could look at them together. Here we go. Just tell me what you think we could do with this. Good or bad?
Well, what's the goal?
Good one. Well, I need to know what I should be doing right now. Something
okay, so
went wrong.
As the user, you're using apparently Google Maps.
No, actually, as the user, I want to know about JavaScript. That's what I'm interested in.
Do you?
No.
Because, right, you don't. As the PM owning this page, like, oh, they might want to know the JavaScript. And as the designer, you're going, no, they don't. They want to. So what was somebody on this page trying to do? Where were they trying to go when they hit this instead?
I have got no clue.
Okay. That's your first problem. What can we do to find out? What assumptions can we make that are reasonable?
I mean,
I'm such a jerk.
I just took this off the internet. What are you talking about? I have no idea where it comes from. Okay,
to be clear, he did say, like, hey, let's do the thing, and you'll, like, fix some things for me, and we'll have this conversation. Yeah. And you even very politely asked, like, do you want to see them ahead of time? And I said, nah, let's have it be more fun.
I'll screw you on stage.
Right. And instead, here we are.
Let's look at the next one.
Oh, this is one of my favorites.
Is it?
Yes, I want coronavirus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you think they were trying to do?
So, what the company was trying to do versus what is the user trying to do at this point? So, I don't know, maybe you got my screenshot of this from the thing.
Possibly.
Possibly.
Yeah.
So I, as a user, was on a website, right, like many of us were during the coronavirus, and I said, and I was on Microsoft Edge. I was probably not in the developer version, so this is probably not my screenshot. And I was just looking at the information, and this came up as a pop-up that was totally extraneous to my experience. Fabulous. So it's coming up as a pop-up, and it says, yes, I want coronavirus. God damn it. What I assume happened as a designer is that this was programmatically created, and the designer probably worked with the PM and said, okay, but where are we getting the text from this? And the PM probably said, or let's ask the developer, and the developer said, oh, we're going to scrape it from the structured content of the place we're going. Great. And the designer probably asked, what if the content is unstructured? Oh, then we won't ship it, right? So they did some thinking. I'm giving them a lot of credit.
Yes, nice.
So if it's not structured, we won't ship it. So if it is structured, this is just going to work. Yeah.
Yeah, I clicked and I got sick. Thank you, Torrey. Thank you so much. A big round of applause for Torrey Podmajersky.